Hello, good day to all. This is Dr. Donna Simpao of Happy Homeschool Association of the Philippine Island. I am also the moderator of the Homeschoolers of the Philippines Facebook group. We are now going towards our 36,000 membership, and that is something that I consider God's blessing in allowing us to come alongside each other and allowing us to truly help each other during this time even more. We've been around since 2013. I have been homeschooling my kids, or I homeschooled my kids from 2001 to 2018 and released them to regular schooling, and had become like a workshop speaker for homeschooling somewhere around 2005 and eventually until today. So I had been in the homeschool community for almost 20 years. And because of that, it stirred in me a passion to understand more about education, the purpose of education, and also parenting in general. And of course, the creative and different strategies that learning can take place in the different setups that a home can provide. So the topic for today is how to support home education during this time of pandemic. And so now that we are already somewhere along the second month of those who had started in June or July, and those that are coming on October 5 when public schooling also begins, there are different perspectives at different experiences na po from all of you, but I'd just like to greet you and thank you, Agape, for this opportunity to share with you. Okay, let me just share with you my slides. It's very simple, when you look at homeschooling and home education and how it has sort of transformed in the past years, you will there. So first of all, I need to really reiterate this paradigm shift in education that many of us need to embrace. I was part of a roundtable discussion with a lot of stakeholders for education, from the government, NGO, to private school, from the State University, UP, sponsored by the Asian Institute of Management Policy Center on Awareness, no? And it was just a discussion from which a policy paper was drafted, and I'll share with you the key points later. But when they asked me as a homeschooler, of almost 18 years leading other homeschoolers, they asked me about, embracing the paradigm shift, and I actually had to sort of correct it and say that actually, having been a homeschooler, having proposed this alternative mode of delivery of education, I have embraced, and all the 36,000 members of our group and all leaders and students that are sort of represented by Happy have embraced this paradigm shift of education, wherein education does not happen only in a conventional setting with direct instruction, with a teacher leading most of the delivery of learning, and the children receive it through lectures, through slides, through audiovisual presentations, and after which an exam will assess and will measure the learning. Educational reformist and revolutionary Ken Robinson has been writing about this need to reform education since the 90s. And so these are some things that Ken Robinson and a whole lot of other educational reformists have been pushing, and I would like to also push this, that these are the key points in the paradigm or the shift that we need to embrace. First of all, college does not begin in kindergarten. Kindergarten is not merely a stepping stone for higher learning, and therefore it should not be considered as a season that should be rushed, that should be rammed with academics, that should negate the need to play, the need to be creative, the need to maintain curiosity. According to Ken Robinson, kindergarten begins in kindergarten, and we should recognize the learner not as a mini adult, but as a child needing all the support that is aligned with the developmentally appropriate practices. Of course, add to that is education is life itself. It is not merely a preparation for life. There will be problems, and it is dangerous to see education as just a stepping stone, and therefore you will be so output oriented, and you will always see that let us sacrifice, let's do this for your future. But if you look at it in a mindset of life and how life should be bursting with creativity, ideas, learning, deeper learning, mastery of learning, and an enjoyment of education, that totally is different from just preparing so that they can pass exams. Of course, passing the exam, as have seen or have been shown by studies here and abroad, is already a natural output or outcome of a holistic and a sensitive type of education that is driven by knowing the style of the learner, the gifting of the learner, the passions, and the interests of the learner. Of course, the multiple intelligence theory has to be incorporated, has to be embraced, wherein intelligence not merely lies on a few dimensions of math or science or the linguistic intelligence, but the arts, the movement, the philosophical thinking are all part of intelligences that must be recognized and supported. And of course, there are 100 ways or more than 100 ways to learn, as well as there are more than 100 ways to assess learning. We are not limited by what conventional schooling offers, as well as quizzes, tests, and long exams, as well as licensure exams in assessing learning. And education should be seen also as a process of discovering oneself, one's passion and purpose in this world. And planning for college or planning for a profession or a career is a holistic process with financial, of course, as a dimension, as well as the other dimensions of growth and development in communication, in psychosocial, emotional, as well as in the physical realm. And for those who have faith as part of the journey, of course, the spiritual is very much part. If you would like to raise children into students who will succeed. Okay. So we have been, if you are a student of the 90s, 80s, and 70s, the model of education has pretty much been all of us, in a classroom setting of 30, 40, or 50 are seated in seats, and the teacher is in a platform with a blackboard that eventually became a screen for a opaque projector or an Ektachrome slides, and eventually became LCD that can bring out slides of PowerPoint pages, Keynote, whatever platform they're using or app. And it is pretty much directed by the teacher. And so information prior to the invention of internet and the access to all the information in the world at the click of your finger, the content was pretty much driven or came from a teacher that was at that time, many, many years ago, expected to be a master of many subjects. And therefore, there was a one-to-one, or you would say a two-dimensional approach. A student receives, the teacher gives. The student receives, the teacher gives. Occasionally, we would be given projects or assignments where we would have to display what we had learned in some creative way through a poster, a group project. But that would be more of the exception than the rule. We know 30%, 40% of our grades would come from a pen and paper, an exam that we would have to pass. And with this new dimension of a triangular representation of education by Richard Elmore, is that it sees the whole process as a three dimension, wherein there is interaction or relationship among three factors or three components: the teacher, student, and the content, that sort of unites them in a task. The teacher handles the content, but the student also has direct access to the content, especially now that everything can be accessed online. Therefore, the student can also have a relationship with the content directly and learn from their own. And this is pretty much seen when a student learns with a YouTube tutorial or a video or a text material that he reads from the textbook or from online, and can actually pass an exam without a teacher teaching them. And so when you look at the three-dimensional, there is now lesser and lesser sort of like need for a teacher to be intelligent or to be a master of all subjects. And that is probably also not feasible or possible, given that there's so many subjects. But of course, we do understand that the fluency and a good command of a certain subject allows the teacher a lot more space to be creative, to be inspiring. If you're very, very good in science or math, there is a bigger likelihood for you to be able to teach it well, using great examples, great metaphors, or teaching it in a very lively, inspiring way. But of course, during this time of pandemic, where we lack the face-to-face teaching, where parents who are not really experts of certain subject matters have to step in, we are now faced with finding ways to make the content also powerful, that it can directly have a relationship with the student, with the teacher merely facilitating or possibly learning together with their students. So let us review the purpose of education, and I would like to propose this as proposed by the late Sir Ken Robinson, again, our educational reformist of 3 to 4 decades. Please, if you are into education, you have to read Creative Schools by Sir Ken Robinson. If you look at the definition of his definition of education, which is, I think, drawn from a committee report that was given to the United Kingdom when he was sitting as an advisor to revolutionize the educational system. Look at the definition, silently read it. There's no mention of academics. There's no mention of, standardized tests. And so when you look at it, that it is the purpose is to enable children to understand the world and to understand their talents. So in the process, they become fulfilled and productive and active, compassionate citizens. You see character, you see productivity, you see industry, you see a discovery of oneself, and so that's partly personal, culture, spiritual. So if we all look at purpose of education this way, and I hope you will, broaden your definition of education versus the accumulation of knowledge and skills, to be able to sort of like have a profession or be successful. Let's look at it in a broader perspective. So whether you're sort of doing online classes or homeschooling, all of you guys here watching, I am not sure how many of you are homeschooling and how many of you are supporting online learning, but it is good to assume that all of us are in some form with children who are enrolled and not yet done with their education journey, are supporting home-based learners. So I would say that the overall umbrella is home-based learning. That is what the pandemic has brought. And so you might actually be supporting homeschooling. You might be doing homeschooling 100%, where it is parent-led, it is family, embracing it as a lifestyle. You have your own schedule. You may do it independently or with a provider. There are those who have opted to support online learning because they have opted to stay in their schools and enroll in a school that is rolling out the delivery of learning through online classes. So let's start with those who are delivering, who have signed up for online learning. As a parent, I have 4 kids who are now all doing online learning, but they are all in high school as well as college. So they have mastered, or I would say mastered, but they have a certain level of technical know-how regarding access, regarding troubleshooting, regarding navigating the learning information systems or the management systems that their schools have provided, whether it be Google Classroom, Zoom calls, Schoology, managed by whatever it is, whatever these LMS, learning management systems or management information systems, they know how. And the only problem that they probably cannot fix is access, meaning Wi-Fi or broadband is down. If you are not in that level, let's say you have preschool, middle school, primary years, you have to master the access to tech. You just have to know it with your eyes closed so that you can either equip your children, equip your kasambahay or another adult or caregiver and delegate if you cannot be the one to do it. This has to be something that is so clear for you so that you are not in the dark if that will require that you attend all these webinars from your school and you really sit down and go through the process and pretend that you are a 8-year-old, 10-year-old and how you troubleshoot, because the problems will recur and recur and recur, given that our children are not yet masters in critical thinking, in problem solving, and they get socio-emotionally concerned and worried and affected when they are lagging or when they are not able to catch up. And I have heard a lot of stories where they had actually cried because they could not read, because naghang and all that stuff. So master the tech side so that will already be taken off the stressors that add to the whole process, which is already stressful in the whole. Number 2 is get on board with the school family partnership. Get involved. Have open communication with your schools and teachers about feedback. Embrace inclusion, compassion, and innovation. So try to find ways, on your own and maybe organize with other parent teachers to actually give suggestions so that it is an evolving, but it's also an improving delivery of learning. A very big thing that will help you guys is to accept it, that this is what it is. There will be times that Wi-Fi will go kaput and will disappear. Accept it. Find ways to adapt and work on the attitude, because sometimes 50% is attitude and that causes already so much stress. This is all new to us. And so therefore new also to our own teachers and our own principals, and nobody is a master because this has not been tried and tested. Therefore, compassion and innovation are key. And compassion begins with parents who also put themselves in the shoes of their children, but also in the shoes of the teachers that do not have all the answers. And so if they had been a little bit more, at least maybe rigid or strict in a certain requirement, when it reaches you, instead of getting all your temper up, you can really firmly, if you really believe it's too much or it is too toxic for the hours given to do an assignment, then, be firm, but do not be rude. Be open, and do not be closed-minded, and just open up about it. Do not think that we are in the same, context wherein they'll just put zero to your child. Even the parents, even the teachers are also, they had what you call essential. They've kind of like downsized the competencies to what is essential, and therefore there's a lot of grace and compassion in terms of the grading. So you can pretty much lobby, especially with more parents. So that's why I organize with them. And of course, do not forget about the learner. In all this, you are merely representing the learner. And so, of course, you will fight for the learner. You will stand up for him or her, but let them speak as well. We listen to them and we let them speak how they feel about this whole thing. The UK had this webinar, a certain district of schools, wherein they said that even a curriculum should even include a recovery curriculum where children are taken through the adjustments, the loss of friends, the loss of freedom, the loss of routine, and the loss of what they had been acquainted with and was looking forward to in the new school year. So even just a conversation with your children on a day-to-day or every 2 days of checking on them and really getting their feedback, so you can properly also give feedback to the to the teachers, I'm sorry. But in also looking at it, middle school kids and high school students should be also given a chance to give direct feedback. We should also not fight for them too much that they forget to fight for themselves. When I say fight, of course, I don't mean violent fighting, but to stand up and speak up, because they're the ones that are actually receiving it and are part of the learning process. If they already are not content, or if they have a lot of questions, if they are probably 13, 14 and older, they can go direct to their teachers if that is allowed by the school. Some schools actually appreciate direct feedback from the students, for as long as, of course, it's done with respect, or courtesy, and all the the right way. If it's done in the right way, they actually appreciate direct feedback, so they can really get it from the learners themselves. During that roundtable discussion, I would like you to look at all of these key points. It was a roundtable discussion on education during and after COVID by Asian Institute Management, Rizalino Navarro Policy Center, where there was representative from the DepEd, from UP, from the Association of Private Schools, from NGOs that deliver educational programs, and of course the homeschoolers and other suppliers and other stakeholders of education. When you look at this and you see yourself as a parent or parent-teacher, whether you're doing online classes or homeschooling, we will have to find our role. We will have to find where we can be a positive contributor versus someone who just keeps on complaining or stressing about things without doing anything. So they have come up with 12 key points in how to approach COVID education during and after. So one, it is a holistic approach. It is not just one sector working, but it is a parent, government, private, medical, health, family approach. And it is not set. It is evolving, emerging, and therefore it is an agile framework that is open to your contribution, your feedback. They've said that they streamlined the requirements and now they're dealing with the essential. But here, as a parent, I would like to also encourage you to maximize this dealing with the essential. What are the recurrent character issues? What things came out during the lockdown that needs to be addressed as a family? What behaviors are not positive among yourselves, your children? And I think that is one thing that this COVID-19 has given us, the time and the setting to be able to deal with not just the educational essentials of academics plus the extracurricular, but life and relationships, character, behavior in general that can be addressed at home. Again, we cannot, we have to really emphasize your role in the learning process. Homeschooling is now seen as a very strong option. And the early years, or the early primary years, we have to really help them address with the social-emotional development. Values formation is important. And what is your role, whether you are a parent-teacher as a homeschooler or a parent who is overseeing online learning? How do you enable yourself, or how do you enable the parents, the teachers of your children? There must be a way for you to give feedback, a way for you to give them tools to help with the learning process. Or if you're a homeschool teacher, then go learn more about teaching, learn more about learning facilitation, learn more about how to have a positive atmosphere at home. So learning can be smoother, learning can be more natural and contextual. Of course, as I've said, even parents need to know technological access and literacy among students. This is a time that they can truly be guided and trained. And access to learning content, ICT, that's information communication technology, and of course the partnerships among all. DepEd is partnering with Globe and Smart. DepEd is partnering with Knowledge Channel. DepEd is partnering with the different channels that will provide TV-based learning. And that also happens with your private schools partnering with the parents. Happy is partnering with the DepEd and creating a lot of webinars for home education and positive atmosphere for learning. If you look at this, just look at this difference. It's a chart that makes it clear, more or less, from my own observation and experience, the difference between online learning and homeschooling. As you can see, there is more freedom, there is more creation and tweaking and pivoting in the homeschool setup. There is more, I would like to say, creativity in approaches in how you learn things. Versus online learning, which is pretty much set by the school, although they get survey, they have what you call parent-teacher communication channels where you can give feedback. It is still limited by what they set as a standard, whether learning competencies, how to assess the children, how much homework is given, what are the things that children can do during the online classes, if they will be muted, if they will be allowed to speak, all of those will be set by the school. So if you are of that belief that learning should have more freedom, that it should be attuned to the learner, that the parents must have a say, then I would think that you can consider homeschooling if you have the availability, the time, the energy, and if you are willing to learn what it takes to be an effective facilitator for learning. So Deborah Bell is one of the pioneers of homeschooling in the United States, and she did a research. And this is the 8 points that how learning takes place and how learners can learn best. So when do learners learn best? And these are the conditions that she had put together after 3 decades of observing. She is an educator herself who embraced homeschooling. I will not read them one by one, but we'll just invite you guys to read and see what are the opportunities that these concepts or these observations that have produced maximal learning or close to maximal learning that you can simulate, whether your children are in online learning or they're homeschooling. There. So when you think about what are the limitations of online learning, that these scenarios cannot be replicated in online learning, then as a parent teacher, I will find other ways, maybe on weekends or after school, to allow my children to pursue their interests, to have time for physical activity and sunshine and fresh air. I will help my students give feedback to their teachers when a child is not ready or not able to catch up. Then I will try to do some level of tutoring to make a concept better for him to understand. Or I will ask the help of the teacher to sort of scale down and let's see how to catch up. So these are the conditions that you as a parent teacher or as a parent facilitator or someone who manages the online learning have to kind of put into consideration. I have more ideas on how to support learning, how to do creative projects, summer projects, Christmas projects, or whatever else your time and your energy and your availability can offer. And so you can visit our blog, homeschool.ph. For more info on homeschooling, you can go to happy.ph. Kidstarter.ph is something that we had started 2 years ago, which is a complete preschool guide for learning through play. So if you have preschoolers, toddlers from 2 to 4 that would like to homeschool, and you can do it at home by just purchasing this book set that is complete, that is being used by 3 top preschools, that you can already do beginning the day you receive the book by just reading the early childhood education principles that are needed to engage with children. You can also look at Instagram of Kidstarter as well as Donna Simpao and Homeschools of the Philippines Facebook group, because we do have a lot of support there. This is Kidstarter. There are 2 book set. It is made out of the 2 years of work of designing well-researched principles, also creating activities. It comes with a teacher's or parent's guide as well as an activity book. And it is enough for a year's worth of preschool experience. So I had just shared with you big rocks. I do not know exactly your situation and what you struggle with, but it's always good to look at the bigger picture of education before we even look into the different setups you have, because there are some things that you will learn as you go. There are some things that somebody cannot tell you how to do it on a step-by-step process. But if you have the big rocks of what's the purpose of education? What is the purpose of your parenting? What issues do you have now in your home? What is your view of the paradigm shift of education? How are you experiencing online learning, and how can it be improved, and how can you positively give feedback to the institution that delivers the online learning so that it could be a win-win situation? I am so thankful for having been given this opportunity. I see home education both in the big picture as we are leading Happy and as we are working with the DepEd as well as with NGOs, as well as with the global groups that are also homeschool associations. But I also see homeschooling in the smaller picture, in the day-to-day, as I manage the Homeschoolers of the Philippines Facebook group of 35,000. And I always, I've given a chance for 30 minutes to speak. I will always speak about the big picture and those big rocks that you need to really have a hold on, to know really on what is your goal during this pandemic school year. What is your vision and mission, that you would like to achieve after this first year, given that if you only will do this for a year. And so that will direct a lot of the decision making on a daily basis. That will direct the stresses, that will direct how you address the the ups and downs and the turns that you're going to go through as your children are educated. So I leave you with that, and I leave you with a verse, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your path straight. That's from Proverbs 3. And I have applied that in my life, and I pray that you also bring in faith as you homeschool, whether through some form of online learning, blended or full homeschool. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Bye.